Hi, I'm Susanna Bowling, and this is live from the Hotel Edison. Times Square Chronicles presents. My next guest had what you would think was a fairy tale life. She was in charge of a PR marketing company. She had a wonderful husband, and she finally had a child. 4 years into that marriage, the fairy tale started to crumble. They were alcoholics, the husband more so, and she left him because she knew that in order to have a life for her son, she needed to get help. And within 1 year, her husband was dead, and she was now the sole parent. Her story is now in a new book, How to Fall in Shit and Come Out Smelling Like a Rose. We're with Kelly O'Shea. Kelly, I love the title. How did you come up with this?
So when I was in college, my parents had a friend on Cape Cod where they were living, and I was going home there for the summers from San Diego State University. And she was a high school guidance counselor. Her name was Linda Mahoney. I was not only doing alcohol in 2001, but I was also doing cocaine. So much that I actually took a gram and put it up my tampon on the flight home from San Diego to Boston because I couldn't imagine going to happy hour with my parents without it. So she could tell I was on drugs, and she told my parents. And then my father called me and said, "Life is not a beach. Linda tells me you're on drugs. I don't know what I would ever do if something happened to you. So you are cut off financially, but you're welcome to come home and reset." And I immediately took his offer. I was thrilled because it was just another cry for help, which I later learned. And at first, of course, I didn't really like Linda, but I grew to love her. And when I came to New York, and that was when I wrote all these journals and I sobered up. But eventually I finished schools in South Florida, and that was where Linda had retired. And so we became really close when I finished school and started my career in PR. And I would go over her house a lot in Florida for a home-cooked meal, and she would always laugh at me when I'm telling my stories, and she would exhale her cigarette and say, "You always fall in shit and come out smelling like a rose." And it's true, just I did go through so much. A lot of it's self-inflicted, right, from the partying, but no matter what, I always came out smelling like a rose.
I have to go back to the cocaine on the Tampax. Was it in like a baggie that you
Yeah,
put
so
it up?
I put a gram in a bag.
Because I'm thinking like maybe you took it a whole new way that I don't know of.
I took the cotton ball out of the tampon and replaced it with
Oh,
cocaine in the
got it.
bag. And then I
Okay.
put the plastic part inside me just until we got on the plane, and then I took it out.
Oh my, no, because I know I actually dated somebody that used women as drug mules.
Wow.
So, and
You know the tricks then.
some of them, but again, I mean, I read them because he was such a narcissist. He ended up writing about everything he had ever done in books, and I was editing them. And so I'm reading them going, huh? Okay, huh? And then trying to act like a normal human being later on when we're having dinner.
Right.
Going, oh yeah, sure, I know about this stuff.
Right. Well, I do have to say, though, for clarification purposes, it was right before 9/11. It was August of 2001, so I never would have gotten away with that after 9/11. And when I have friends who are cops now, and they're like, "You would have gone to jail for 7 years." So
Oh my
thank
God.
God I never went that far. But that was the thing. I always fell in shit, but I would figure it out. And thank God it was never terrible, right? Like God only takes you as far as you can go, I think, and as far as you can handle.
Now, you didn't go to rehab, though you wanted to.
No, right. I didn't. I wanted to. However, I had my own PR agency, and my biggest client was in the private jet industry, and I also had a client in the yachting industry when I moved down to South Florida in 2018. And there was no way that they would pay me for the 30 days. Not only that, I was nervous that I would be replaced. So, and then I also didn't want to be away from my son. So even after my husband passed, I felt like I would be a burden on my parents. Oh, and my mom made sure to tell me that I would, in fact, be if I went to rehab. So I thought,
Really?
yeah.
If you went to rehab, you would be a burden?
She wasn't very happy. No, she thought my parents felt that the drinking was like a real pain in the ass on the family, basically never thinking maybe it was because all the childhood trauma she went through, right? And having some grace. Instead, they would blame me and shame me for my behavior. Starting at 17 with like anorexia,
Wow.
alcohol, cocaine, it was like shame on you for like shaming the family. It's an embarrassment to the family.
That's something that I'm actually working on and incorporating into my life, that the words shame and guilt don't exist.
Yes.
because I think that they cause a lot of trauma that people want to run away to and use substances to do that running.
100%. And so, you know, Susanna, the whole reason when I was a party girl in New York, now the distinction, my husband was a real alcoholic. He was happier drinking a bottle of vodka by himself. I was happiest at parties in the Hamptons with people and getting attention. And the problem was I have CPTSD. And so I
What's
thought,
that?
Complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
And what is that?
It was so vast. All the childhood trauma and everything I went through, which I write about in the first couple chapters, was just a lot for a child. And mostly it was out of my parents' control. But it was in the late 80s, and I should have gone to therapy. But back then, again, that was something that was like a little embarrassing on the family. And so I was instead taught to brush it under the rug. So then what happened was that when I would become a teenager and go for drugs and alcohol to numb, again, I was blamed for that when what should have happened, and my mom knows this today, we've come back and she gets it. And this is a lesson for parents today, that you've got to see what's underlying it and get them in therapy, because there's always something. I knew I had a soul, because every time I would do something wrong when I was doing cocaine with Cliff or drinking alcohol with Charles, it seemed like they didn't feel bad the next day, and I felt awful. I was mortified. Who did I offend?
And you're like, I'm never getting into heaven. Oh
yes,
no!
I'm never drinking again. So I always felt really bad. So I wanted to know what was underneath it, and that's the work. And then you start to like do this. Then there's more shadow work, and a lot of parts of my mom that I have in me that I wanted to work on and really heal.
Now you talk about shadow work. That's more on the spirituality end of things. We've had this talk, so I know that you are.
Yes.
How did the twin flame, because I know that affected you in a great way, how did your twin flame journey and how did the shadow work play into everything that you're dealing with right now?
Yeah, so my twin flame journey is that he is definitely a catalyst in my life. So despite the hard times that you're going to read about where my heart was really bleeding because I was really ready, wanting that relationship so bad, and he just wasn't. And honestly, myself at this age totally understands that. I look back and I'm like, oh my God, relax, Kelly. Like, I was only 20. He's 26. You have like your whole life. But that was my codependency, my childhood trauma, and wanting what I couldn't have. And anyway, on the flip side, he's a very good man, and it was just a year that I was doing cocaine, but it was a very long year. He didn't like that I was doing it so much, and he had started to get his act together, and so because he did, I wanted to, but I felt like I couldn't do it in San Diego. People were coming over too much. I was dealing it myself.
Oh, really?
So when my dad offered me an out, I went to New York. I said, I don't want to live on Cape Cod, but let me live in New York because I think I'll eventually work there anyway, and pay 2 months rent, and then I'll be on my own. And I actually got a job because my father was in the beer business. I got a job working for a beer distributor, and then cocktail waitressing. I had no money to go out, so I figured, let me just take a break from booze, and I'll rewrite these journals. And that was when I read the Celestine Prophecy also, and I compared my life at that point from ages like 19 to 20 to the Celestine Prophecy. And then, so my twin flame's name is Cliff. I did try to go back to California only a year later, and it wasn't time. And then he hurt me again, which again is understandable. Just the way he did it was not very good. But then I decided to finish school in Florida. But then very quickly when I moved to Florida, I graduated quickly, and then I started getting on this timeline, right? Like I have to get married and have kids by 30. So I met this guy, and my first boss she said that I'm more of like a jet setter, and this boy was more of like a country bumpkin. Like she didn't see it. It seemed to her like I was just, rushing, trying to check off a box, right? Or maybe trying to find someone very opposite from Cliff, right? Someone who wouldn't hurt me, and maybe like my mom find someone who would do whatever I want, like my dad does,
Right.
So anyway, Cliff actually flew out to Florida and said, I don't think you should marry this guy, but I don't think you should be with me either, and I know you're not going to like that, but I think you should go back to New York and focus on your career. And I did, and that was when I started my PR agency. But of course, my timeline kicked in, and that was when I met my husband Charles. But he was not the one. I didn't love him as much as I love Cliff, but I really wanted a child. And I thought at that point in New York, I was almost ready to just have a child with a friend, and that's kind of like what Charles was to me. And I think he knew that. And I think that weighed on him over the course of the marriage. And his drinking got worse. It went from partying to like, oh, this is a real problem.
Ooh.
So yeah, and then, but then the twin flame, I really didn't talk to him for a long time of the marriage and me having a child. And of course I went back to him. I stopped drinking, and my husband died in 2020. I stopped drinking in 2021, and I went back to California to try to be with him. But again, he wasn't ready, and he hasn't healed. He was still drinking. So that didn't really end well. And then I was dating someone, in the fall of 2023, and he reached out and he told me that he loved me and that if I ever wanted him to, he would come to me. And so immediately I wanted that guy. He said, kick that loser out of our bed. Like he knew there was a guy in my bed. It was wild. I go to the bathroom, I start crying. I'm like, oh my God. So of course I don't want this guy in my bed anymore. This guy is gone. And I wanted to see how quickly Cliff could get down here. But I kind of called his bluff. He never came. And that was really hurtful. And it was just, again, with me having a timeline, him not coming. And so then me saying very hurtful things. But I feel like I got it out of my system. And a lot of what you'll read in the book, some of the personal details I left out. But, anyway. But,
So I have a question. Where is the twin flame journey now?
So now, as the book was closing, I had said to him, because he hadn't come by his 50th birthday, which was last November, and I sent him some things you'll read about in this book, a nice poem about I choose to leave you, da da da, and also some not so nice things, and then I blocked him everywhere. But actually speaking to you about a month ago, you told me, because you know about twin flames, not to block. You said you agreed that it's okay that I've come to the point in my life where I'm no longer going to chase, but I'm not going to block because I want to be open to the potential. I want to be open to any opportunity, but attached to no outcome, if that makes sense.
Well, right now the whole twin flame journey is in a very precarious position because this is lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. This isn't just one life.
Right.
And I don't think most people know that. Most people don't know, in case you don't know, what a twin flame is that when we all started humanism, we were all one part. And then we split. And as we split, and as we split, and as we split, we became soul families, then in soul contracts, soul mates, and the final split before we became individuals was your twin flame. And normally, have you talked about the mirrors in your book?
Yes.
Yeah, talk about the mirrors.
So twin flames are said to mirror each other throughout life and reflect shine the light on each other's shadows, so where you need healing. So actually, the last thing Cliff said that made sense to me was, because I was going back to him with all these accolades, right? But I did this and I did that. And he goes, right, but what does that matter, Kelly? What do we know? It doesn't matter. None of that matters. And he was telling me how he's helping people now by not being a mortgage broker, but actually helping people get out of foreclosure in California. And I think that's really cool, and that enabled me to hang out my ego. So I had the Dark Night of the Soul,
which is really Dark Night of 3 nights of Dark Souls. It is not one little night.
No, it was last Memorial Day weekend. I was camping with my son, and it was not pleasant.
Oh yeah, no, I've gone through more than one of these.
Yeah.
They are not fun, and they are not one night.
No,
more like 3 to 6.
I was annoyed that yet again he wasn't there to go through all that shit with me.
Well, one of the things that I'm learning right now is that they are so fragmented, you have to bring the fragmented pieces back together. So my twin flame thinks that I don't ever want to see him again, because I told him that basically. And though it was true at the time, and it was true at the time, I chose myself for the first time in my life. Right. The fact is that 2 days later, I found out something else, and all of a sudden that changed. But I've been working subconsciously in different timelines, which most people won't understand, but oh well.
Yeah, I understand.
What can I say?
Well, and I think the book is a real... I think, again, so where we're at right now is just that. I have unblocked him. I have we have a mutual friend, and actually we have a mutual friend who's sober and very successful, who might become a private jet client of mine.
Oh, good.
Because I switched my career from PR in private jets to being on the sales side as a private jet broker. So anyway, and I just casually talked to this friend, and I joked, and I said, how long do you think it's going to take Cliff to realize that I kind of threw him under the bus in this book? And he goes, I would be honored to show him. So I know he knows it exists. He's not on social media or anything though, but so I know he knows it. I bet he'll read it, and I'm sure he'll reach out, because as you'll read in the book, when I would write him letters, he would always come to me and be like, you were right about everything.
Well, it's ironic, because I think that's kind of what the female twin flames are doing now, is writing books about how they got to where they are.
Yeah.
And whether they like it or not, they play a big part of the book.
Yes, exactly.
Because I have one that's about to go to a literary agent, and
Wow.
yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But mine talks more about past lives and different things.
Yeah.
It goes more into the spiritual part of it, where people are either going to think I'm completely lost my mind, or they're going to completely get what I'm saying.
Well, that's why I was so grateful that I'm doing this with you today, and that tomorrow you're going to lead the
Yes.
Q&A, because people that don't get it right, they'll look at you like you have 10 heads, but you get it. And
I do.
also I was going to say, like, Dr. Sarah Al-Madini, I follow her. She has a boy on her own just like me, and Shawnee told me to follow her last year, and she's really interesting, and she just did a book, because the other side of the feminine twin flame is you get annoyed because typically the male is a narcissist.
Oh, massively.
And her book is called Fuck You, Narcissist. So I'm like, I love that we're all breaking free and swearing.
Yeah, I'm not. Mine's called The Timeless Thread.
That's a little softer.
A little. Not really when you get inside of it, though. But mine is more to help other twin flames as well as me, as well as people that are evolving right now, because the veils are just getting thinner.
Right.
And whether people want to believe it or not, that's their problem as far
Right.
as I'm concerned at this point.
It's true.
You know, there are so many fishes in the sea that we call life. Find your little tribe of fishies. If you don't like my fishy life, go find your own.
Exactly.
So that's kind of how I feel. Tell me about the emotional code, because
Yeah.
that was something I didn't get.
Okay, so, I've talked about this before. The bulk of my book was written in journals between 19 and 22, and that was very much when, Cliff was on my brain. And a lot of the journals are about that. But then I wanted to do the beginning. And I do have a lot of memories from my childhood, actually, but I was working with Hippocrates Wellness in West Palm Beach last year. At trying
That's
my
one of
hand
the
on
best
social
places to
media.
go, actually.
Yes, I felt blessed. I went from PR. I didn't do much social media and private aviation, so I kind of tried my hand on it last year in wellness, and I got to experience a lot of their treatments. So
Oh, wow.
I did the emotion code. Now, the emotion code is a modality that's been around for a while, and what it does is it gets you in a deep state of meditation with a healer, and it pulls out emotions that don't belong to you. They belong to your ancestors. From
Oh, yeah, I've
generations
been
ago.
doing this, actually.
Yes.
I didn't know that was what it was called, but I've been
Yeah.
doing this.
And she could tell me where and she wrote it all down so I could look at it later, but she told me, she said, oh, anxiety came at age 8 and it was from your father, XYZ. Or she said, overwhelm came at age 11, it was from your mother. And then when I was deep in meditation, I could feel my father's cousin and my father's mother in the room with me. And she said, your ancestors were just here, but they left. And I said, I know. And when she wrote down everything just on one piece of paper, I went home and verbatim remembered all the childhood trauma. And, I felt bad. I didn't want to throw my parents under the bus, but a lot of it was out of their control.
But excuse me, you're not throwing them under the bus. We think that by disclosing the things that have traumatized us, that we're throwing people under the bus. We're not.
Right.
We're just disclosing the truth, and if they don't like it, I'm very sorry, but
Yeah.
these are facts.
Exactly. And back in the day that you just didn't spill the family tea, but,
Oh, but I did.
it is what it is.
No, that's one of the things that's actually in my book, is that you're told that you pick your parents, you pick everybody, you pick your siblings. I did not.
Right.
And I have stated for a very long time, I have not. And any psychic or medium or spiritualist that sees me says, wait, you didn't choose. And the answer was I didn't. I was pushed. And I was made to feel bad by the spiritual community, because that's not a belief that they have at all. Like, they're so stuck into the box. You must fit in the box.
Right.
And I'm like, what do you do when you don't fit into this little box?
100%.
And I wasn't not trying to be in the box. It just so happened I wasn't. And I think that we need to understand that not everybody in this lifetime chose. They were pushed, and especially a lot of the twin flame couples, because they were trying to break them up, because if the twin flames get together, that means they become like the avatar tree and they start to heal humanity. And the powers that be, everybody always asks me, what's their names? Like, if I knew it, don't you think I would tell you?
Yeah.
But they don't want us together. And so they're doing everything in their power. in the programming that you see in TV, even in the spiritual writings, you have to really be careful because no. So books like yours that are written in truth and are written from, I'm trying to think of what the word for this really is. Loss into gain. Because by doing the alcohol, even though you thought you were winning, you were losing.
Right.
But when you took control of it all, you gained.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because again, not throwing anyone under the bus, but like because Cliff, he knows he has narcissistic tendencies. So yeah, I did use that in the book, and I wrote, I didn't know back then, but this is narcissistic behavior, and I called him on it, and I told him I'm not here for it. So save that. You need to heal. I'm not here for this. Like
Right.
that's because that's what they do is they come back in just to know that they can have control of you, and then they go back out. And the ghosting, I have an abandonment wound, so that's not okay.
That's the worst part, though, because I think every single twin flame, girl and guy, or guy, girl, whatever, I think that we all have massive abandonment wounds. And like in my case, I had to get over it. I had to see that, in the case of ours, and almost every twin flame, we were broken way back in Atlantis and Lemuria. And a lot of us, our twin flames gave us their light and took our dark. So in all these lifetimes where we think that we're being born again and that we are starting anew, it's a lie.
Yeah.
We're starting with piles of baggage that we don't even know exists, and then we have to learn how to deal with it. As everyone tells, oh no, you couldn't have had that baggage from this life. Yeah, right, watch.
Right, and that's why you and I talked about this. I said one thing that I don't like about him is that he's very jaded. You know, and that's you know tough because I am the light, right? And I'm like, oh,
Right.
everything's fine, it's fine. But that's the balance, and that's the yin yang. But again, and I think I wrote that he couldn't face his shadows to meet me in the light, but I believe that if he is, I would love to see the healed version of him. And I said this to our mutual friend Keith too. I said, I would love to see the healed. I'm just not holding my breath, but he is so smart. He can do this. You know, I call
Yeah. They all can do it.
yeah. So I think that's like his final chapter. And you know, when he turned, maybe I know that this was a part of it. We probably weren't meant to meet the past couple of years. He needed to see that I healed. The feminine starts at first.
Right.
And he didn't believe it at first. It was funny because I sent him a picture. I do marijuana, and I put cannabis in my beverages, so I drink cannabis. It's great for me and my CPTSD. When I sent him pictures of me, there was a cannabis drink, and he literally he circled it and sent it back. And I was like, I'm not drinking that. And I sent him what it was. This is a cannabis drink. It's
Right.
it's like he couldn't believe it, or because he knew, like, now I have to, right?
Well, I think in the cannabis drinks and the things that, you know, are there, they're done in such a small amount, but sometimes those small amounts are things that we need. Like mushrooms are like a really great thing.
I love mushrooms.
Yeah, same. And people don't understand that. People don't understand that in small amounts, in micro doses,
Exactly.
they can be good, but in macro, right?
Yeah.
Macro doses, they're not. So
Right.
it's an I and an A.
Right.
Which one is the version of it? What haven't I asked you that you would like our readers to know about?
Well, so speaking of the spiritual side of it, my book, there are ties to the Celestine Prophecy, right? And so the Celestine Prophecy was written by James Redfield, and it talked about 9 spiritual insights. And I do believe that, part of my purpose is to bring that back to light today. And I think that, we're kind of leaving the material world and going more towards the spiritual
Absolutely.
world right now.
Absolutely.
And so, that's a big part of my book. I think people should be excited about and talking about going with the flow. And that's very relevant today, like with Mel Robbins, like let them, that whole theory. And, there's a lot of things I think are relevant today. And also, we talked a little bit about, like, so everybody knows the middle is the journal, but then the end, and I think it will be helpful, again, just wrapping up this whole chapter on the narcissist and the twin flame, because there's a lot of people struggling with this. I met a
More
doctor
than anyone could ever know.
the other night. It was nice. I finally had, like, I just stepped out as an author for the first time last week, and it was nice because women were gravitating towards me more than they would otherwise, knowing what I am there for.
Right.
And I met a doctor, and she has the same issue, and she's beautiful, and she's healed, and she's like, she's getting fed up, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so relevant. She's like, but I feel crazy because nobody else knows, and I'm like, okay, I need to talk about this, and especially like in the ultra high.
I think that we keep it all inside because we're told that this is not healthy, this is not real, you're out of your mind. I'm very lucky. I mean, I have my friends Magda Katz and Pat Addis, and they believe in me even when I talk in versions of life that they don't understand. And a lot of times they don't understand what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. They haven't a clue. So, but they still love me through it. Right. And it's really lovely. And then I, therefore, am not afraid. Right. You know, in this lifetime, so much was taken away from me. There's nothing else you can take.
Exactly. Well, and that was that was like the ending of the book, was this metamorphosis, and how was I dealing with it? Well, he came back into my life, but he didn't show up on my doorstep, right? So I think that's a guidebook for women, how I finally learned to stand on my own 2 feet and show up for myself, and so it doesn't matter.
It's the hardest thing to do.
100%. Like I cannot be attached to the idea of divine union, right? But I'm open to the possibility, but that you have to get to that place where you're okay either way, because it could be somebody else. You have to ask the universe, like, yeah, I want divine union. I want to be reunited with my twin flame or someone better.
I'm not attached to it. I'm attached to making mine whole, whether he knows it or not.
Right.
And in doing that, I'm actually breaking other codes for other people.
Right.
And I always know when I do it well because I feel empowered.
Right.
I don't need anybody to tell me, oh, good girl, because I already know it to myself.
Right, exactly.
And I think that's where the journey is headed these days.
Yeah, and again, and then the book, just to close things out, it talks about how I also pivoted my career. So I was a big publicist, here in New York, and I was down there also because I had the yacht client. But things started to change after COVID. I didn't want to do it anymore, and I felt women in PR and marketing have sold themselves short over the years by not getting a piece of the sale. So now I'm in sales for Fly Alliance, and some of these guys used to work with me at Magellan Jets, but they're good guys. And I'm a private jet broker in West Palm. And it's going really well. And I do, I hope that my book will be inspiration for anyone who's leaving a marriage or a career, and they believe in their heart that they deserve better. So.
Tell us the name of your book again and where you can get it.
Yes, so my book is How to Fall in Shit and Come Out Smelling Like a Rose, and you can get it on Amazon or you can get it at shitrose.com.
I would like to thank my guest Kelly O'Shea today for being with us and being so open and honest. For Magda Katz, who, even though she's probably shaking her head at me right now, makes us look and sound good, but she still believes in me. I'd like to thank Romel Gopez and the Hotel Edison for giving me a safe space to talk and to share my guests with you. I'm Susanna Bowling, and this is Live from the Hotel Edison, Times Square Chronicles Presents.